Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin tonight in Arviat, where the community is mourning after the death of a young man in yesterday's blizzard. RCMP say it was notified yesterday that a 27-year-old man had gone out earlier that morning and hadn't come back. The man's body was found outside the community. The investigation is ongoing. The entire Kivadluk has been dealing with blizzard conditions for days now, and Arviat was no exception. It remained under a blizzard warning for most of the day. A social media influencer charged with illegally hunting bears in the Yukon says he's deeply saddened by the case before the courts. Cheryl Kawaja has the latest.
As we heard this week, Tristan Ham is facing 19 charges related to allegedly hunting and killing 2 black bears and a grizzly in the Yukon. Ham has a huge following on Instagram, 2 million followers. He posts about outdoor lifestyle, boxing, and adventure-related content. Among the charges, Ham is accused of providing false or misleading information to obtain a Yukon resident hunting license, and also charges related to exporting the bear parts remains outside of the country. The charges are both territorial and federal. In a reply to CBC, Ham says, "I am deeply saddened by this. While I cannot discuss the specifics of the ongoing case, as advised by my legal team, I want to emphasize my unwavering commitment to responsible and respectful engagement with the natural world. I look forward to this matter being resolved appropriately in court." The charges have not been proven in court. The Yukon's Department of Environment declined to comment on the case, but did specify that under the Yukon Wildlife Act, a person convicted could face fines of up to $50,000 and or a year in jail. And if multiple animals are involved, then those charges could apply to each of the animals. The charges against Ham have disturbed some Yukoners. At the Yukon Fish and Game Association, the president says he doesn't understand how someone could potentially obtain a Yukon hunting license under false pretenses, as is the allegation against Ham. And he says anytime there's a court case about illegal hunting, it tarnishes the image for all hunters, including those working hard to promote ethical and responsible harvesting. Tristan Ham's case is due back in court early in the new year. Cheryl Kawaja, CBC News, Whitehorse.
The Whitehorse Street where a fatal house explosion happened is now closed. The fire marshal's office needs space to investigate the cause of the blast. Whitehorse RCMP are also investigating the explosion as a criminal matter. Authorities have taped off parts of the area. They're urging residents to stay clear. The investigation is expected to take a number of weeks. In the Northwest Territories, RCMP say drug traffickers are using new tactics to stay hidden from police. They say dealers are coercing their way into people's homes to sell drugs. Police say the traffickers often manipulate people to get in. They say they won't stay long, then use whatever means necessary to stick around. Corporal Matt Halstead spoke about the tactics today with the CBC's Mark Winkler.
The drug trafficking trade is a completely predatory trade, and what we find is that they will take advantage of people's addictions. They will take advantage of people's vulnerabilities for their own gain. So there are a number of different scenarios that we've come across. One that I've heard more than once is that people who are struggling with addictions will make contact with these people trying to support their own addiction. And then it's an offer of, can I come and stay at your house? It'll just be for a night or two, and then I'll leave. And what we're seeing is that the people aren't leaving then. Now they have a place to stay and they're not leaving. There's threats of violence sometimes, or threats that if they go to the police that, there'll be retribution. And then we're finding that people are reluctant to call us because they're worried about getting charged for having engaged in this activity and having hosted these people. And it creates a really difficult circumstance for people that find themselves in that position.
Halstead says officers recently found a dealer in a home in Fort Resolution, but he says it's happening right across the NWT. He says RCMP will be moving faster and harder on these cases, including using disruptive activities like knocking on doors to talk to homeowners. The federal Liberal government presented its fall economic statement earlier this week. As of now, it's not clear exactly how it'll impact the North, but it does include funding for an issue felt across the territories: housing. The statement includes $4 billion for housing. It's called the Urban, Rural and Northern Indigenous Housing Strategy, and the money will start rolling out next year. Northern Affairs Minister Dan Vandal says he's not sure how much of that will go to Nunavut.
We feel that there's a good partnership there, and we're working very hard to make sure that the maximum amount will land in Nunavut. We know the need is great, and I think the partnership potential is great as well.
Vandal says the federal government has given $50 million to Nunavut over the last 3 years to support housing construction. He calls that a down payment. The Hay River Ski Club is facing financial problems. The executive says the situation is so bad they might have to shut it down. Carla Ulrich has that story.
The Hay River Ski Club says they will cease operations if funding is not reinstated. So far, the nonprofit has been unable to replace transitional funds they've been provided by the Department of Municipal and Community Affairs. Chuck Lorette is on the ski club executive team.
We've been doing some fundraising. We've had some donations, but it's just, we're looking for $35,000 to $40,000 in funding from NWT lotteries. That's a lot for a group to have to fundraise annually. It's beyond what we can do as a group of volunteers.
The ski club used to receive lottery income because it is a nonprofit, but Revenue Canada changed the taxation rules in 2016, and since then, the club was relying on MACA funds, which were always meant to be temporary. A spokesperson for MACA says the ski club was guided to work with territorial sports agencies to help find new funding options. Lorette says his team is working hard to find solutions because many people want to see the club saved.
We have about 15 kilometers of trails. 5 of them are lit for nighttime skiing. We have youth programs in cross-country skiing and biathlon. We have an active membership. I believe we had around 160 or 170 members last year.
Lorette says the club is a top-notch facility run by volunteers, but says it will have to shut down in 2025 if it can't find the money needed to stay open. Carla Ulrich, CBC News, Fort Smith.
Navigating the streets of Whitehorse can be a big challenge in the winter, especially for people living with limited mobility. The city of Whitehorse is looking to update its snow and ice control policy, and a group of Yukoners wants to make sure their voices are heard. The CBC's George Moratis met up with some of the people pushing the city to ensure access for all.
Finn and Dawson Beaulieu, this is what they face every winter. The brothers have Duchenne muscular dystrophy. It's a genetic condition that breaks down their muscles and gradually weakens their bodies. These wheelchairs are their independence. It's how they get around.
It's hard for accessibility when there's piles of snow in the parking spots.
What happens when your wheelchair gets all gunked up with snow?
You usually have to push it and take 2 to 3 people. It's like 500 pounds, so it's pretty heavy.
For the brothers who live out of town, a highlight is trips to the downtown core for shopping. Those visits are put on pause every time there's a fresh dump of snow.
We can have to tell them it's not safe to go to town because there are no spots. The spots are filled with snow. The ramps are slippery, so it's not safe to go. They get frustrated. They get anxious to be around the house.
Someone who sees that frustration firsthand is their older brother.
Yeah, worry all the time, and we always, my folks and I always kind of, constantly reinforce to their care aides and constantly remind ourselves to, not let them, cross the street alone and stuff. Even though they're in their 20s, they're grown men. They should be able to do what they want and have the freedom and accessibility and safety.
This month, Ross and Finn went to City Hall, urging the city to prioritize accessible parking. While there, they found out the public washroom deemed accessible wasn't.
It said it was accessible, but it was pretty small and I couldn't fit my wheelchair in.
Then what happened? What did you have to do?
Couldn't use the bathroom.
It's not good.
No.
Someone who's been spinning tires of his own is Ramesh Ferris. For decades, he's been pushing the city to do more to improve accessibility for all Yukoners. He's used to fighting. Born in India, at 6 months of age, he was diagnosed with polio. His legs left paralyzed.
I've only known living a life with disability. I rely on leg braces and forearm crutches. So this is my way of life, and I want to be able to have a life that I have access to programs and services freely with no barriers such as snow and ice.
Walking down Main Street, Ferris points out the various ways the city has been out of touch to his needs and many others.
I've informed Mayor and Council several times that all of the city accessible parking spots, they don't even actually meet any barrier-free access codes. They're regular spots just with a accessible sign or painted blue.
Ferris says right now the city has no money earmarked to change that and make accessible parking a priority.
And that is ridiculous, you know, like I hand cycled across Canada, but I can't walk 4 blocks in downtown Whitehorse to work. Does every life have value in Whitehorse? And so that's the question here. And how are they demonstrating that? They're not.
Tomorrow night on Northbeat, we meet a longtime Yukoner who only recently had her accessibility compromised. We take a drive through downtown Whitehorse in search of accessible parking. That's tomorrow night on Northbeat. George Moratis, CBC News, Whitehorse.
As voters waited for results from the NWT election just over a week ago, they may have noticed some candidates were announcing the results before election's NWT. Luke Carroll explains why that happened.
While speaking with CBC News on election night, Huron Testart informed viewers he had won the race for Range Lake.
So we're at this point, we're very confident that we can safely declare victory tonight.
He wasn't the only candidate to announce the results on air before elections NWT provided them.
It doesn't quite feel real yet, I must say. I don't, as far as I understand, I've got it at this point, but it's been a weird night.
But why was that the case? Stephen Dunbar is the NWT Chief Electoral Officer. He says candidates may get the results before they're made public because elections officers need to be more thorough in their tallying.
But what the election officer has to make sure is that everything is tallied appropriately, including all the unused ballots, any declined ballots, any spoiled ballots, any rejected ballots, all things that don't necessarily impact the number of votes a candidate got, but that have to add up before that poll can be reported back to us.
Dunbar says he doesn't believe there were any more delays in this election than previous ones. Luke Carroll, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Yesterday we told you about the Sinixt First Nation and their push to be recognized as Canada renegotiates the Columbia River Treaty with the United States. Their traditional territory covers the river. Now, the group was declared extinct in this country at one point until the Supreme Court overturned that decision. Here's Jackie McKay with the second and final part of her documentary looking at the nation's fight for a seat at the table. And we start where we left off, looking at why Canada has not consulted with the Sinixt. It says it's because the Sinixt are part of a larger group in the U.S. called the Colville Confederated Tribes.
It's hard to know how much the Colville tribes are getting in the U.S. The State Department confirmed the tribe members signed non-disclosure agreements to ensure confidentiality of the negotiations. The chairman of the Colville Confederated Tribes confirmed with CBC that Canada has not reached out to them about the negotiations. The BC government acknowledges the Columbia River Treaty caused harm to First Nations. Its website talks about the damage flooding caused to First Nations land, fish, habitat, and artifacts, but doesn't say which First Nations it's referring to.
The surest sign I have of how significant this is that the Canadian government and the BC government have relentlessly refused to allow the Sinixt to be at the negotiating table. And I think that's the first clue that we're sitting on a really powerful moment here.
Eileen Delahanty Perks has written books on the Columbia River Treaty and the Sinixt. She has reviewed documents that prove the BC government knowingly flooded land with Sinixt graves, and that 90% of archaeological sites in the Arrow Lakes were destroyed. Perks says there was a huge rush to build these dams because the U.S. offered Canada bonuses if they completed early.
It was just greed in the end that caused them to look away and allow these cultural sites to be flooded without preservation.
The river is essentially liquid gold. The treaty between the U.S. and Canada is there to ensure that every drop of water is being managed. In hydropower alone, the Columbia generates billions of dollars. It provides nearly 50% of BC's power and 40% of all U.S. hydroelectric power.
There's something very powerful going on when you take an extremely rich hydropower system worth billions of dollars and you expose a truth about the lack of ethics and the lack of truth in that process.
One other aspect in the renegotiations is the salmon. The fish have huge cultural significance to First Nations and tribes all along the river. Large dams in the U.S. have blocked salmon from accessing 40% of their natural habitat. Restoring the salmon to the Upper Columbia and repairing the ecosystem is a priority for DR Michelle.
Let's start to do those things we need to do to correct some of those historic wrongs and make this a better place for all of us, those future generations, for the benefit of all.
Recently, the Biden administration made a commitment, more than $200 million over 20 years to the Upper Columbia tribes to reintroduce salmon to the river. Michelle says his grandparents were the last people in his family to see salmon at Kettle Falls. If done right, future generations will see salmon return to the river.
We can have hydro production, we can have flood risk management, we can have our fish back. We can afford to do all of that. It doesn't have to be a fight over.
Unless Canada opens the door, and because of the Digital decision, the Sinixt only recourse may be legal action.
They have all of the same legal tools available to kind of force the government to the table that a group situated in Canada would. And that's the key takeaway. There's no higher legal bar for a group in the United States than there is in Canada.
But when the duty to consult applies in an international treaty is tricky. According to Brown, the courts haven't resolved if the government has a duty to consult during the negotiating phase. He says that may be purely a political matter and not for the courts to decide.
Even if it's legally unclear whether or not the government has to do it, there's nothing stopping the government from consulting, from engaging nations in the negotiation table if they think it's a good idea to do.
When the new treaty is implemented into Canadian law, this would likely be the phase where the duty to consult is triggered. For Seymour, though, she says the Sinixt should be consulted now.
Ideally, what would happen is Canada and the other tribes would say, hey, you know what, you have been blocked. You have been wronged here. And welcome to the table.
Negotiations will end in a matter of months. Who is to benefit and how the power of the Columbia will be harnessed for the next several decades is still to be decided. Jackie McKay for CBC Indigenous in Washington State.
I'm Kathleen Goldhar, host of a new podcast, Crime Story. Every week, we bring you a different crime, told by the storyteller who knows it best. All the ins and outs.
It was a story of murder, of exploitation of a schoolgirl.
You got one witness who can't be found. You got another witness who has changed his entire story.
I remember just this feeling of like complete disbelief.
Crime Story, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
You are constantly on the move, and so are we, making sense of the moments that matter together.
Looks like things are maybe winding down.
Asking what, why, when.
To the center of the biggest stories, meeting the people living them.
Thank you for letting us be here. What's your situation?
Making sense of our world.
How are we going to be part of this solution?
With you and for you.
Connectedness, groundedness.
I'm Adrienne Arsenault. This is The National.
gonna have to be two people, Liza. Do you think you can do that?
I think I can.
I feel so much pressure to not do the thing that I know will make everything.
Canadians of generations have been miseducated.
But we don't talk about that. We are here. We have been here.
These stories are us.
I want my children home where they should be.
You'll go to jail if you don't sign.
Tomorrow is Black Friday, one of the busiest shopping days of the year, and of course that is followed by Cyber Monday. Both promise shoppers the best deals ahead of the holidays, but this year customers are trimming their budgets. Nisha Patel takes a look at how holiday shopping is shaping up in an uncertain economy.
This holiday season, shoppers aren't feeling too festive about their finances.
I think we're more mindful of what do we need to give each other as a gift.
So we are only window shopping today, just checking out who's selling what, for what discounts.
You can't go shopping the way you used to, right?
From the kids' lengthy wish list to that office secret Santa, spending over the holidays can quickly spiral out of control.
Obviously, those holiday dinners are going to cost quite a bit more this year, as is, domestic travel to visit relatives.
Credit card bills have been climbing. Economists say consumers who are trying not to dig into their savings are choosing to cut back on restaurant meals and vacations.
Canadians are feeling the pressure of high prices and higher interest rates. Experts say that will have a big impact on holiday spending.
According to one survey, the average household is planning to spend about $1,350 overall this season. That's down from more than $1,500 the year before. People also said they are planning to donate less to charity and buy fewer gifts. So retailers like Staples are making an extra effort to attract budget-conscious shoppers.
They're looking for value, they're looking for price consciousness, and they're looking for opportunity to shop early.
Sales started earlier this year and the discounts are deeper, though retailers still promise additional deals on Black Friday. With many shoppers opting to choose cheaper items, businesses are stocking a bigger variety of products.
So what we're trying to do is give them options from end to end across all price ranges.
Alan Kaitas was glad to find some 50% off signs at the mall. He's had to tighten his belt this year.
I mean, with 3 kids, we're trying to make the best out of it, right? With some good deals. Hopefully we can have a good Christmas this year.
Even the inflation Grinch won't dash his holiday spirit. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Arctic Winter Games trials are underway in the NWT. Students took to the wrestling mat in the capital this morning. Youth came from Uluhaktok, Gamati, and Yellowknife, and they are all competing for a slot on Team NWT for 2024. We went to check it out.
So we're having the Arctic Winter Games camp and trials, and so we have a lot of athletes that are here to both try to learn more about the sport of wrestling, just challenge themselves, getting what we call comfortably uncomfortable by just learning new skills, and then we'll see who ends up going to the Arctic Winter Games. But right now it's really just about developing wrestlers and developing new athletes.
Used to be just Yellowknife. A little bit in Hay River would have amateur wrestling, but now with Monique Smith, all of a sudden we've got 9 people down from Ulu. We've got 4 people in from Gamity, plus a small Yellowknife contingent to try out and see how they do, see if they can make the team for Arctic Winter Games Wrestling.
I'm nervous, but also very excited to see how far I could go, because this is the first time I tried wrestling and I find it very fun to do. I look forward to experiencing getting out of my comfort zone and just making friends.
I've done jiu-jitsu since a young age, and I wanted to go to Arctics for basketball, but I couldn't, so I'm going for this instead because I had a better chance. I think I'm a naturally aggressive person, and I just enjoy the close-up aggressiveness of martial arts, I guess. Of wrestling specifically, I have no idea. I just enjoy it. It's fun.
Outside of the wrestling, I'm hoping that the boys and the young ladies, they have an opportunity to learn who other people are, Up in our community, we're about 500 strong, so it's quite small. And being able to have an opportunity to go to Alaska, say, for the Arctic Winter Games, you have so many different cultures coming together to compete and have fun and make friends, and I think that's what it's all about. It's the connections between people.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, you can always go to our website, cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
You're not a millennial.
Yeah, well, Dr. Dre's not a doctor. I feel like such an imposter.
You need money to survive.
He had something to hide.
Try typing with your thumbs.
What do you call it?
It's called a BlackBerry.
Huh. We call them crackberries.
There's a serial killer on the loose.
2 attacks in a week.
Go on.
Everybody's got something to hide.
We're not gonna be here forever, right? Makes me want to make some changes.
Your family can't take much more.
Think you're a better driver when you're high? Think again. No alcohol, no drugs, no victims. A message from Mad Canada.
What Canadian animal is bigger than a school bus? Eats tiny critters but doesn't have any teeth. Likes to swim in cold ocean waters in the summer. And feeds milk to its baby calf. If you guessed the right whale, you're correct. These giant whales live in busy parts of the ocean, so people need to be careful when driving boats near them. To learn more about the North Atlantic right whale, visit our website at hww.ca.
I want my children home where they should be.
You'll go to Jade if you don't sign.
There's gonna come a time you'll feel the darkness. You don't let them win.
I understand that you're struggling emotionally.
Sure you want to do this?
I mean, it's research, right? You need to stop asking me for things I can't give you. You've done it my whole life.
I was homeschooled as a child. You can only be as smart as your mom. That's it.
Gross.
Okay, cool.
I love it.
We have an incredible show lined up for you tonight.
Wow.
Get the news you need without restrictions. Download the free CBC News app